Tonight, a race against time, the desperate search for survivors still missing in Morocco. The devastation as crews dig through the destruction.
Lots of people still at their need. We could not have taken them out.
The dramatic rescues and the rising death toll. The G20 wraps up with geopolitical tension.
Relations are perhaps a little more strained than they've been in the past.
As plane problems keep the Canadian delegation in India indefinitely. Plus, a first for Canada's men's basketball team.
It's the beginning of something that it's going to last for a long time.
A thrilling finish to an historic run at the FIBA World Cup.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo. Reporting tonight, Heather Wright.
Good evening. Time is critical, crucial, and starting to run out for rescuers in Morocco trying to find survivors trapped under mounds of rock and rubble. This is what crews are dealing with as they remove debris by hand, searching desperately for survivors, one person here being pulled out alive from the devastation. The country's strongest earthquake has killed at least 2,100 people and injured even more. So far, there are no reports of any Canadians being killed or injured. Feelings of aftershocks have many sleeping in the streets tonight, too afraid to stay inside. Today, the first funerals were held as the country begins 3 days of national mourning. CTV's Melanie Nagy starts us off.
A distraught woman is comforted while rescuers use a blanket to carefully cover her loved one's body as it's removed from the rubble. When the crew heads towards a makeshift morgue, you can hear her sorrowful screams. Morocco is grieving the loss of thousands of people after a disastrous earthquake struck the country late Friday. Numerous funerals were held today. This one took place in a field outside a small town. Rural and remote areas were the hardest hit.
Our dinner.
36-year-old Yassin says his family was sharing a meal at the time of the quake. With their home seriously damaged, he's uncertain what they'll do next.
No food, no water. We lost also electricity. It was very catastrophic.
The historic and culturally rich city of Marrakesh was also damaged, but the nearby airport is open and filled with tourists looking to leave.
It was absolutely terrifying.
Toronto's Nathaniel Williams and his partner were preparing to head to the airport when their hotels started to sway, sending them scrambling for safety.
We just grabbed each other and held each other and just hoped and prayed for the best. But we were thinking this may be our last moments, honestly.
Global Affairs Canada is helping dozens of Canadians and urging anyone who hasn't reached out to make contact.
It was like if the ground under me was collapsing.
Montreal City Councillor Serge Sasseville was visiting friends when the ground started to shake. While the ordeal was terrifying, he says people are doing whatever it takes to help those in need.
Moroccans are very resilient people. Beautiful to see how they help each other.
Communities coming together, especially in the search for survivors. Here, regular citizens join a rescue team as someone is pulled alive from collapsed concrete. After they're placed in an ambulance, people embrace. It's a much-needed moment of joy in what's been a tremendously devastating and difficult time. Melanie Nagy, CTV News, Vancouver.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has wrapped up meetings in India for the G20 summit, but will be staying in the country a little while longer. His planned departure was a no-go due to technical problems with his plane that won't be solved overnight. Also stranded with the PM is CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver, who has more on the final day at the G20.
At a summit tinted by geopolitical tensions, G20 leaders gathered at Delhi's memorial to Gandhi to lay a wreath for a worldwide symbol of peace. But under that veneer of unity, a stilted handshake between Justin Trudeau and host Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
It is a very large bilateral relationship, so it's unsurprising that at times there will be difficulties. And this happens to be one where a moment in time in which relations are perhaps a little more strained than they've been in the past.
Canada's relationship with the Indian government has been challenging in recent years, stemming from the Prime Minister's support of farmers' protests in India and by a long-standing Sikh separatist movement in Canada. Trudeau says that movement came up during his brief sit-down with the Indian Prime Minister. Foreign interference also part of the discussion.
Diaspora Canadians make up a huge proportion of our country, and they should be able to express themselves and make their choices without interference from any of the many countries that we know are involved in interference challenges.
Canada's national security advisor has flagged India as a top source of foreign interference alongside China. And while Canada didn't meet with the Chinese representative, the British Prime Minister did.
In particular, my very strong concerns about any interference in our parliamentary democracy, which is obviously unacceptable.
As usual, this year's summit ended with a joint declaration, but the wording on the war in Ukraine is a point of contention. It failed to condemn Russian aggression. The Prime Minister acknowledged the wording could have been stronger.
If it was just up to other countries around the table, it would have been much weaker. The G20 is an extremely disparate group, and we worked very hard to get as strong language as we possibly could.
The Prime Minister was set to return to Canada tonight, but a technical issue was discovered with his plane shortly before takeoff. Now the Canadian delegation will be remaining in India. When and how they'll get back to Canada is unclear. Annie Bergeron-Oliver, CTV News, New Delhi.
A Canadian aid worker has been killed by Russian forces in eastern Ukraine. Ukraine's president announced the death of Anthony Tonko Inat, who's from the Toronto area, as well as another volunteer from Spain. They were on their way to help civilians near the front line when their car took a direct hit from Russian shelling. 2 others were wounded. CTV News interviewed Inat in Ukraine earlier this year and asked him about the risk of working in a war zone.
Obviously, it's a war zone. I've never been in one, so the danger's obviously there, but I'm not here just to think about that. I want to, use my time to help as much as I can.
A year and a half ago, Inat sold everything and bought a plane ticket. Since then, he's been delivering food, medicine, and supplies, and building shelters. And Russia also bombarded the Ukrainian capital early this morning, launching dozens of drones at Kyiv. Ukraine's Air Force says it shot most of them down. No one was killed. The convicted killer who escaped a Pennsylvania prison managed to slip through a police perimeter this week and has altered his appearance. Danilo Cavalcante was spotted here on a doorbell camera more than 30 kilometers from where police had focused their massive manhunt. He has shaved his beard and was driving a stolen van that he has since abandoned. Cavalcante has been on the run for 11 days now. He was serving a life sentence for murdering his ex-girlfriend. An update to an E. coli outbreak at some Calgary daycares. 4 preschools where no one had tested positive for the bacterial infection are scheduled to open their doors again on Monday. The number of cases has climbed again to more than 190, and 27 children remain in hospital. Alberta Health Services is still testing food samples from the centralized kitchen used by the 11 daycares. The remaining 7 locations could open as early as Tuesday. Deepening drought conditions in BC are renewing concerns about future wildfire seasons. Research had predicted the prolonged and intense wildfires seen throughout the summer, but they arrived decades earlier than expected. And as CTV's Isabella Zavarisi explains, this may just be the beginning.
Oh my God.
Record-breaking wildfires, sweltering heat, and tinder dry conditions. It's been a challenging few months for communities across BC.
We're feeling it here, but no surprise at all.
This summer, drier than it's ever been in southern BC since the early 1900s.
Below 15% of normal precipitation, which even for the Okanagan is a remarkable thing. Penticton only saw 8 millimeters over 3 months.
The province remains in an unprecedented drought. Residents ask to conserve water, with some cities seeing nearly half the rainfall they usually do.
It is unlike any kind of drought conditions the province has ever faced, and in my opinion, truly is a sleeping giant of a natural disaster.
As BC deals with its worst wildfire season, The firefight is hitting the entire country.
We burned 4% of the forest in Canada. Okay, that's kind of an amazing number, 4%. We've had 200,000 people evacuate. Another amazing number that, these are records.
New research analyzing climate trends found BC is in for more intense, prolonged wildfires. Experts say the crisis was forecast, but arrived decades sooner than expected.
If we don't act, we will continue to pay tens of billions of dollars, whereas we could invest now and reduce the chances of extreme impacts on communities into the future.
Some experts are calling for a national firefighting service.
Yes, it will cost a lot of money. But if you prevent one Lytton, one Shuswap, one West Kelowna, one Fort McMurray, it more than pays for yourself.
Both Flanagan and Daniel say there needs to be more government funding to make communities more resilient to wildfires, as the crisis is expected to worsen. Isabella Zavarisi, CTV News, Vancouver.
While thousands fled flames during this record wildfire season, it's firefighters who race toward danger. Those who have lost their lives saving others were honored on this Firefighters National Memorial Day. CTV's Sean Varden reports.
Patricia Hill and her twin boys remembering a husband and father taken too soon.
He was 37 when he passed away, and it still hasn't set in that he's gone. And so today, just seeing it, it just makes it a little bit more real, and that he's gone.
Sunday, the National Firefighters Memorial, honoring those who made the ultimate sacrifice.
It's really a day to pause and reflect on and supporting the families of members that have lost their lives.
A member of the Ottawa Fire Service, Patricia's husband, Ryan Hill, one of the many in Canada lost to diseases linked to exposure to the toxic environment fires create.
My husband was diagnosed with grade 4 glioblastoma, which is a brain cancer.
It's just a reminder that, we have to continue to look after our firefighters from a health and safety perspective.
A Canadian-made CL-415 water bomber flew over the event, uniting those attending with those still fighting wildfires across the country. This year, 2 Canadians were killed fighting the wildfires in British Columbia, 25-year-old Zach Muse and 19-year-old Devlin Gale. 2 other firefighters were killed fighting wildfires in Alberta and the Northwest Territories.
We still are fighting fires across Canada. Unfortunate impact of that exposure is that unfortunately we anticipate to see more illness amongst the firefighters who are responding.
Sean Varden, CTV News.
Well, Canada's men's basketball team capped off a spectacular showing at the FIBA World Cup today, upsetting a powerhouse in the bronze medal game.
Canada, for the first time ever, the senior men's national team has won a medal at the World Cup.
Canada edged out the United States in overtime and will now head to the Paris Olympics next summer as World Cup medalists. Here's CTV's Raheem Ladani.
From the opening tip-off, it was clear Canada and the United States were ready to battle on the court for bronze.
Brooks for 3, knocks down another one.
Mississauga, Ontario's Dylan Brooks set a new Canadian record, scoring 39 points. While also relishing boos from the crowd throughout the entire FIBA Men's Basketball World Cup.
Everybody that was throwing shots at in Twitter and Instagram, watching me play. But, it just helps me get better and better each and every day.
Coming into this game, Canada had not won a medal on the World Cup or Olympic stage since 1936, when they earned a silver at the Berlin Games. With just seconds left, it appeared they would end that drought, until this happened. A game-tying 3 by Team USA, leaving fans sporting red and white in disbelief. While Canada has already made history this tournament, qualifying for the Paris 2024 Olympic Games, in overtime they proved they're one of the top teams in the world.
The 3, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander.
This time Canada would not let the lead slip away, defeating the U.S. and winning a bronze medal for the first time in the country's history.
This team was amazing, special. It's the beginning of something that it's going to last for a long time.
In the locker room afterwards, it was a toned-down celebration, likely the sign of what has been a long and grueling tournament. The players now with just one thing on their mind: coming home.
Hamilton, here I come. Oh my goodness.
Canada's men's basketball program will soon shift its focus to the upcoming Olympics, where they haven't been in 24 years. Expectations are now higher, and there's less than 11 months to regroup for the Paris Games. Raheem Ladani, CTV News, Toronto.
Coming up, an historic win at the U.S. Open. A Canadian tennis player doubles down for a Grand Slam victory. Plus, a game-changing move by the president of the Spanish Soccer Federation. After weeks of criticism, the president of the Spanish Football Federation has resigned. Luis Rubiales has been under fire for kissing Spanish soccer player Jenny Hermoso on the lips during the awards ceremony following Spain's victory at the Women's World Cup in August. Rubiales said in a statement, "After my swift suspension by FIFA and the rest of the cases building against me, it is clear that I cannot return to the post." Rubiales had remained defiant in the face of growing outrage. He was suspended by FIFA 2 weeks ago and has been formally accused by Hermoso of sexual assault. In Flushing, New York tonight, a grueling win for tennis star Novak Djokovic, who made history in the men's U.S. Open final. Djokovic beat Daniil Medvedev in straight sets for his 24th Grand Slam trophy, the same jersey number of his good friend and big tennis fan, basketball legend, the late Kobe Bryant.
What happened a few years ago and him and his daughter passing hurt me deeply, and I thought, 24 is the jersey that he wore when he became a legend of Lakers and world basketball, so I thought, it could be a nice symbolic thing to acknowledge him for all the things he's done.
Djokovic matches the all-time record of majors won by a man or woman in any era. Another amazing feat at the same slam, Gabby Dabrowski became the first Canadian woman ever to capture a Grand Slam title in doubles. Time for a 2-minute break, but still ahead, saving lives on this Suicide Prevention Day. On World Suicide Prevention Day, a Canadian doctor is sharing her brother's haunting hospital story. He waited nearly 2 weeks to get into a psychiatric ward, but never made it. It's a sad reminder of the vital resources needed for people in their darkest moments. Here's CTV's Luca Caruso-Moro on the desperate calls for help.
Dan was a incredibly intelligent, witty guy.
Dory Schiff says her brother Dan was loved by so many.
He was also a thrill seeker, loved riding motorcycles. He was a pilot, loved to travel, and really just had such a lust for life.
He also struggled with depression and addiction.
He was getting treatment. He had a psychiatrist that he was seeing.
But it got so bad he considered ending his life and tried to check himself into the psych ward. When he arrived at the ER, it was packed.
And unfortunately, there were no beds available in the psych unit, so he was in emergency for almost 2 weeks. He was just feeling kind of hopeless and decided that, he wasn't feeling suicidal anymore, so he decided to check himself out of the hospital.
That was in early April, she says. A week later, he died by suicide. He was 49 years old.
It's a very, very difficult time for the world.
Psychologist Perry Adler says a lot more people are seeking mental health care. With isolation and stress in a hangover from the pandemic, Quebec's health system can't keep up. Data from the Fraser Institute shows Quebecers are waiting longer for treatment even after seeing a specialist.
In 2021, the median wait time was 12 weeks, among the fastest in Canada. But 1 year later, those times doubled, and patients had to wait 6 months for treatment, the longest wait anywhere in the country.
1 in 10 Canadians will have suicidal thoughts in their lifetime. Still, experts say many of them won't seek help.
Actually, at my brother's funeral, the rabbi was very open about saying that my brother died of a heart attack of the brain. And if you look at it like that, it really opens your eyes to the fact that it really is a disease.
Schiff says she's sharing her brother's story so that others can know they're not alone and that there is help for those who need it. Luca Caruso-Moro, CTV News, Montreal.
After the break, life after amputation. How a BC man found new perspective by chasing the sun. We leave you tonight with the story of a man who lost his leg to diabetes and fell into depression until one day Bert Arnold decided he needed to slow down by moving forward. CTV's Adam Sawatsky explains.
Although Bert Arnold always woke before the sun, it wasn't until recently that he really noticed it rise.
I wouldn't relax until the day was over, and it was just always a constant battle to sort of climb the ladder.
But after decades of running his own businesses, the workaholic lost his leg to diabetes and found himself in a deep depression.
I got down on myself pretty hard.
After a lifetime of defining himself by being self-reliant, Bert suddenly couldn't drive, couldn't secure a wheelchair-accessible apartment, and couldn't find the strength to even talk with anyone.
I didn't want to be here anymore.
But then one morning, in an attempt to clear his head, Bert felt compelled to wheel his way to the ocean.
I just had to find something to fill my time, and I didn't know how.
So Bert simply started rolling himself forward, silently observing his surroundings.
Wow.
The next day, he did the same thing, wheeling a little further, noticing how the crows seemed to greet him along the way.
They inspire me to come down here.
The following days, Bert shared his snacks and found himself rolling for hours.
And then it took over, and I'm just happy as a clam now.
More than a year later, the 70-year-old begins every morning fueled by the rising sun.
Stunning every time.
Wheeling more than 20 kilometers a day.
And now my life is full again.
Filled with making human friends, greeting furry ones, and maintaining those feathered ones.
I don't even care if I do anything else. This is all I want to do now.
Because this, Bert says,
this is what life is really all about.
And rather than searching for satisfaction through climbing up a ladder, Bert says if we take the time to notice the rainbows, we just might find something far more rewarding than gold.
It is, without a doubt, it is the happiest I've ever been.
Adam Sawatsky, CTV News, Victoria.
An important message. That is it for us this Sunday. I'm Heather Wright. Omar will be here Monday for Sandy and all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching. Have a good night and a great week ahead.
CTV National News, Canada's #1 newscast.